Greetings, this is Dr. Wilson, and I'm going to overview for you how you can create a podcast using GarageBand. So actually, let's start at the very beginning. So I'm going to open my GarageBand, and of course this is a Mac product. I'll tell you, for $4.99 you can download the GarageBand app and use that on your iPad if you have one, and it works very similarly. In this case, I'm going to just use the GarageBand software. It's a pretty easy option. If it'll open, there's an option there to choose right away what you want to create. So I'm going to pick New Project. I'm going to tell it this time I want to create a podcast. And then I have to name it. So we'll call this Practice. I'm going to save it to my desktop. When it automatically comes up, you have a couple of preset options. They've got categories for choosing a woman's voice, recording a woman's voice, a male voice, and adding jingles. So I'm going to choose the female voice. And down here at the very bottom, you can see that there are options down here. So this button in the center takes you back to the beginning of your recording. The next button next to it is play, and then of course the red dot is record. My voice, and you can see that it's recording because you can see the scribbles that are my voice. I'm going to press the play button again, which stops it, so that you can see what that looks like. And I can go back to the beginning and play by hitting my space bar. Voice, and you can see that it's so you see what that's like. Now I'm going to hopefully transition fairly quickly. I'm not going to save that one, but I have one on my desktop, or one that I recorded a little bit earlier, and I just called it GarageBand. Another nice thing about this is there's very easy ways to add tracks. And so over here in the bottom right hand part of my screen, this button right here allows me to import my media browser options. So I'll click it again so it'll pop up again. And that means that anything that I have in my iTunes, even photos and videos. So if you wanted to do a vodcast, if you had photos saved in your iPhoto, you could add photos and save the file as an AACE file. In this case, I have gone on and just created some generic music using GarageBand. But if, let's say I have something else I want to use that I've edited, then I have my GarageBand library here. But I also have my iTunes library, so I can choose all kinds of different options. So I think I'm going to take this jazz piece from my GarageBand and drop it over here in my jingles line. Now, I'm going to cut off the beginning of this because you see it's kind of nothing, and then I can slide it right around. Also, what I know to be true is that this jingles line is a little loud initially. So I'm going to press spacebar so you can hear it. This podcast is being created using... I'm going to hit my spacebar and hit play again to stop it. Notice that I can do some things to my audio line to make it seem very professional. So here on my jingles line, I want to fix my track volume so that right about here, see where it lines up and my voice begins to start? I'm going to push a start, just before that, a start place, and then right after that, a place. So I have to have two dots so that this second dot, I can bring it down. And that means now my volume is going to decrease right as my narration increases. And you can see here on my female volume, it's a pretty constant high speed. If I got too loud or I need to maybe raise it a bit, I could raise it some if I need to, if there's not enough contrast. Also, I'm going to scroll over here, and do you see how my voice or whatever stops and my song keeps going a little bit? Well, first of all, my song is way too long. So I'm going to come over here to the end of it and just drag from the end. And I can just drag it, and I'm already cutting off what I don't need. And then here it is coming back right. So I'm going to put it about right here. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just do it to about right here. I'm looking for a space, light space. Now again, here's where I stop speaking. So I'm going to put a dot there and another dot here so I can raise it up again, and then it'll finish out kind of high. Now let's just see what that sounds like. All right, so I'm going to, this is actually my go back to the beginning button, hit the space bar. This podcast is being created using GarageBand. It easily lets you add narration and then even add musical tracks to the background of this narration to give a more exciting and tasteful podcast option. It is a lot easier to listen to something if you have some music kind of changing the tone in the background. So there you have it. That's kind of our podcast. And so it ends a little high. You could always go back here, and I may fade out down here at the very end. And then we can come back up here and say, well, what does that sound like again? Here, that sounds nice. So let's say I'm done. I've made my narration. I've done that, and I can let's do one more thing. And I've had a hard time listening to this very carefully. I have a little blip in what I'm saying, and I think it happens right about here. This podcast is being created using. So I can come right down here, and I can click and drag. And let's just say this is where I think there's a problem. Now I'm going to take a blip out. Then I can do that as soon as it finishes analyzing. I can click and drag a little bit, and whatever I click and drag can be the piece, and I can hit delete, whatever's highlighted, and I can delete out that portion. So here I can hit delete. That's a little too much, I think, actually. See if I can move it back to right here. And it'll kind of flex out what I sound like. Okay, so then we can go back to the beginning. I don't know what I just did, but this podcast is being created using. Well, I must have taken out the background. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to edit, undo, and let's just leave it the way it is for right now. You can click and drag to edit out the sound, but we'll do that at a later time. Let me go to the end. You can file save it, and if I save it as is, this is saving it as a GarageBand project, which doesn't help me if I want to take it anywhere else. You may want to save it that way, and that's fine. But to share, like any Apple product you want to share, and you can send your podcast to iTunes, or of course you can export to the desktop or to disk. But if you put it in iTunes, then it can be easily subscribed to. So you can do that, find a link, and or export to the disk. And when I do that, you can leave it. I put mine, instead of the AAC encoder, I changed mine to the MP3. and exported it, and it became an MP3 file for my desktop. This is just saying if you had any artwork in there, images, then you need to save it as an AAC, not an MP3. And there you have it. It will save that way and be complete. So enjoy. I think it's a pretty easy tool. I hope you have a good time creating podcasts for instructional use.